Hi, my name is Patrick Howard. I'm the writer and director of From a Certain Point of View.
And I'm Dan Whitehead, and I'm the producer from a certain point of view. So this was our senior project this year. Patrick, you want to talk about the writing a little bit?
For my senior project, I really wanted to make an ode to Steven Spielberg and just the great '80s movies like the Goonies and Stand by Me, where a young kid is faced with a problem, and in order for that kid to solve the problem and to become a better person and to kind of grow up, they have to go on this kind of life changing journey. And those are the films that I love, and especially when they're adventure films like The Goonies, they're even better. So I wanted to just put everything into this film as an ode to those movies as possible.
And this character that you're seeing right here, this is Charlie, played by Anya Barris, who was 12 at the time.
She was 12 at the time, yeah.
And her character originally was written to be a guy in the first draft. And
yeah, so she was originally supposed to be a guy, just because I was kind of just writing for me, and I was just kind of wanted a kid to connect to, so I just picked a boy. But then our production designer, Rebecca Morris, suggested Charlie to be a girl, and I thought that was actually a great note. I figured we should probably just run with it, especially nowadays where I think we're seeing this rise in female empowerment in cinematic films, and I think that was a great choice.
And here, this scene that you're looking at originally took place between the father in this scene and a mother, and we weren't able to find anybody to play the mother. We were getting a lot of people for the father.
Strangely enough, there just weren't that many hits for the mother. There were a lot for a father.
And we also had to make sure, because we had already kind of found Anya and we were really happy with her, so we had to kind of find parents that were believable as them. So any of the mothers that tried out were just not fitting the type of role that we needed them to.
Right, and fun fact, actually, the shots of Anya, were not shot the same day as the father, played by Zach.
Right, we filmed them separately on almost like about a week apart.
Yeah.
And we had to match the lighting and all this stuff. And then what you're seeing here, this bike scene, was the very last thing we shot of the whole production. Because it had changed a bunch of times. Originally, it was supposed to be at a railroad station, and then she rolls down a hill, I think, or
yeah, something like that. It was very big, and I think it would have been great, but just we realized with time constraints, which is something which was a big thing we learned for senior projects, is that we just kind of have to scale down. But this works just as well.
And then also safety concerns, because we weren't sure what the timing of the trains were and all this stuff, so we wrote that scene, or kind of tweaked that scene to be what it was, where she just kind of drops the bike.
I think, at least for our cinematographer, Will Pfeiffer, this probably was the trickiest shot to do, because we were thinking of putting it like on a jib, but when we realized that that Will had to scale down this really steep hill, that wasn't going to work. It was going to be too heavy, so Will handheld that shot and this shot right here just the best that he could, and he did a great job with it.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's in this shot, but most of the time when she's holding this flashlight, there's actually a big piece of tape over it, because it was so bright that it was just like overwhelming into the camera. So we had to like kind of dull back the flashlight and to make it work.
Yeah, I didn't think that would be a problem, but yeah, our gaffer Kai actually put that on there, and it actually worked. A charm, actually really reduced the light. That flashlight, which was like this really cheap thing that was putting out, I was really surprised by that.
Yeah, and I'll mention that the outfit that Anya's wearing as Charlie, the overalls are actually her own. She came in to the audition wearing that, and we just absolutely loved it.
Yeah, that was like straight out of like the 80s. I was like, oh, perfect. I think she didn't really have to give any lines. I thought just that alone, she had the great look to it.
Yeah, she sold us almost immediately just because of what she was wearing, and then of course, tied it together with her performance, which this is her first acting role, I believe, in a movie.
First acting role. It was kind of funny because she was having a little trouble with just hearing the word action. She had never heard that part. She never heard of the idea that the director has to say action before you start acting. So it was a great learning experience for her and for me.
Yeah, which is actually this scene right here is where this is the very first scene we shot with her. This angle, that face down angle like that. And yeah, she had the trouble where we were like, okay, sound roll, blah, blah, blah. And then, she jumped up before he yelled action.
The camera almost fell on her. So
yeah.
It was like first day, and there were already all these little problems, but we got through it.
Yeah, and I think it worked out fine. And the only issue we had was I don't remember what time of year this was supposed to be, but I think it was supposed to be a bit warmer.
Yeah, I had written it for the fall, but we just ended up shooting it in January, and I think beginning of February. Or no, was it February? No,
February and March.
January was pre-production, and we just kind of went with it. I mean, it wasn't like a drastic change that would ruin the film. So,
but yeah, that's why there's like the lack of foliage, and it was rather cold out those days. But she was such a trooper. I mean, between takes, especially this day right here, we were just kind of throwing a coat on her, and then popping around anytime we needed her and all that kind of stuff. So, what else to say? So this journal, which I actually have here in the office. There was 2 of them that were created. One is kind of a stunt journal, and one is the hero shot journal, which is obviously the one she has in her hand there. And then the stunt one, I don't think we ended up actually using.
It's funny enough, we didn't. I bought 2 journals, but we really ended up using the one that you see on screen because it held up pretty well together, even when Rebecca put it through the ringer.
Mm-hmm.
And so we kind of just we found that to be the best one.
Yeah, and this shot here, it was a bit of a weird jump. You see her walking around, and the next thing was like her sitting on the ground, but she was having trouble kind of giving us a convincing trip, so we had to kind of think of a way around it, and we ended up just kind of cutting to black.
The editor, Jai Thomas, him and I just kind of worked around it, and that was probably one of the trickiest parts was for that fall, but I think we got through it.
Talked about running away from home? No.
So this cabin actually belongs to my parents, who bought it a couple years ago, and it was that location was one of the main incentives to write this story in the first place, because I knew that I wanted to have a cabin in the woods, something that's kind of prevalent in 80s movies, specifically in horror though, even though this isn't a horror film, but it just had a great aesthetic to it that it would be like foolish of me to really pass it up. And granted, it was like a 3-hour drive for about 2 weeks for a weekend, but it was totally worth it.
I agree. And this is Maurice McKinney, who's playing the sheriff there. He came in and just really knocked it out of the park with his performance, and it almost made me feel bad that his part wasn't a little bit bigger. And we just didn't have the time with it being a short and stuff. I didn't want to miss this right here. So this shot was really cool because we put it was just like a little LED.
It was a cheap little LED light that we had it turned on, and then she would open it, and then we have this great little reveal of light that's like kind of homage to
Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But surprisingly, it was actually really hard because it had a sensor on it, which I didn't know, I think, until I opened the box. And so whenever you would close it, it would turn off, and so it wouldn't really turn on right when we wanted it to. So it took about 11 takes to get it right.
But yeah, ultimately, obviously, it looks really great, and it worked out for the best.
So I hope you guys enjoyed it. We sure did.